after a little bit of fun with Shores of Tripoli, I'm back to my great joy of the current period, invasions here. And, well, there's something interesting that I don't know yet, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but I've started processing the aging. The barbarian nations, a whole bunch of them have turned into kingdoms. Pretty much everybody I could, except for the Angles. Why? I don't know. I'm getting close to the end of the game, so they're unlikely to become point burdens at this point, and my assumption is that kingdoms can do a little bit better. But that may be false. I mean, things like the Lombards, I'm just really not sure. They have a pile of pieces. They chose to go as early as possible, actually, and do the increase, even though they've got pillaged cities that they're sitting on, and that's not necessarily greatly to their advantage, but okay, whatever. They get the big money. They get the big money for a couple turns. This is a victory point turn. It seems like it's the time I'd want to make the exchange. That's what I've been working with. I don't know how well it's been standing me so far. We'll see if I relearn something I should have learned before. But one thing I do notice is this turn, first of all, this is the victory turn side, but from this turn on, there's this sort of, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's a symbol for Catholicism, essentially, and it's got a 1+1 question. I have no idea what this does. I looked in the religion rules where I would expect to see it, and I see nothing. Maybe this is when you're supposed to actually score the, hey, if you're Catholic, you get these points or something like that. I don't know. That is not how I've been playing it and not how the rules read to me, but maybe it's squirreled away in one of the many booklets. It is not under the religion rules that I see, and it's not in the key here or anything like that. So I just got no idea. Maybe I'll be able to figure it out. Maybe not. The problem, of course, is, it's not actually a map symbol. So it's not in any of the various types of keys that there are. And there's several of them on the board. And it's not something I can search for, right? It's an image. I can't search for that in the living rules. And I don't remember anything that has to do with this. It might be. Nope. I was thinking it might be here in turn 9. But no. Yeah, I got no fucking clue. I'm gonna reverse my Lombards because I noticed they get a major invasion this turn. And 4 units. That's probably better than they can do otherwise. So I'm throwing them back to the age they were at and took away their money, and I'll give them back their stuff again. I'm making decisions without looking at this first, and yeah, this probably isn't wise. And the reinforcements brought us a bunch of new people, but basically 2 more races. We still have a couple left that haven't shown up yet. The Vikings and the Khazars, which are both over here. But right now we have the Avars coming in from the east, where you expect people to sort of come in and push their way through, and I don't know what the hell they're heading for. They want to make it to the Danube, so they're going to be a problem for the Gepidae. So these kings are turned around. But the other new one is the Bavarians over here, who it appears have a major invasion. No, just a king. They want Germany. And they're kind of sprouting up out of nowhere in the middle of the Noricum, which, could be a real issue. Like, they could be, pushing people out of there. I don't know what they're intended to be, some kind of like Germanic pagan revival or something. Obviously the Lombards came from that direction, but it feels kind of weird to be sprouting up in the middle of the map that way with something fairly, player owned and normal. I don't really understand. There was probably a Bavarian tribe kicking around before. I don't know the history of the Bavarians well enough to say anything about them. At this point, we're talking about, I don't know, what is it, 550. I don't think Imperium Romanum goes this far. I think it ends before this. I don't really recall, but yeah, I'm not really that familiar with this period of the barbarian history, the Dark Ages, whatever going on in Europe itself. I'm not really comfortable with it at all. Most periods of history I'm not comfortable with. I mean, the period in this game I'm not that comfortable with, or in Imperium Romanum I'm not all that comfortable with. And it's like, yeah, I got my focus on, a couple of key events in the Imperial era, but once you start getting to the barbarians and everything, there's very little information. I haven't been able to absorb too much of it, to tell the truth. So that's going to put me up to the events phase, and I'm pooped enough. I played something else fully. I just wanted to get as far as I could while I'm still, like, barely functional. A certain kind of, design attitude that fits in with everything else here. So there's this piracy event card. I've been running through the event phase. Caravan came up. Basically a lot of play immediately events. Bad luck, which killed a chit, I guess. It's not specific enough about that. Another issue, this one says you return an event card to the deck and reshuffle it in. Well, all he had was an event chit, so I did that because it gets rid of one and I hate them. Almost, the cards are almost as bad though. But this one, you randomly select a sea zone. Well, there are like 19 sea zones, I think. There's no means of randomizing, within the game or whatever. I mean, sure, I pulled out a 20-sided die, but nothing. It's like randomly selecting cities, whatever. There's no real good mechanism for identifying things and randomizing them in such a fashion. I don't know what I'd suggest for this, but, I end up doing it kind of ad hoc, which means I start counting. I count all the things, see what size die I need. And then I hope I follow the same path when I'm counting the next time around. But there certainly is some room for my initial count to get me numbers that are different from when I roll the die and actually count. I don't know what to say. It's just, games no longer have stuff like this, and they kind of stopped in the 80s, I think. They started like, yeah, if you're going to randomize something here, there's a way to randomize something. I just feel like complaining, but, when I see something like that, it's very disturbing, and so much of this game is filled with that kind of crap. I think that got me through the event cards. Now I deal with the raids. As, again, an example of the absolute futility of all of this. I run the Gallic Romans for their economic phase. No money, so their card bankrupts them. That's -5 victory points. It might be -10. I think bankruptcy actually ages you twice. So they may have fucked up in terms of total penalties here. The card itself, I don't remember what it had on it. It had an age on it. You're not going to bankrupt again, so another -5 victory points, and then not enough cash to pay off the level of decline, because I'm only one space. And, and I'm a subjected nation, so I got to pay that too. It just works out that, I got no money. I got no army, I got no money, I got nothing. No problems, right? Yeah. I just generate negative victory points each turn. I got to check currently, because he also got hit with something at the beginning of the turn. He aged at the beginning of the turn. So currently he's at minus 15 victory points. It may be supposed to be minus 20 because I think you age twice on a bankruptcy. And that's just going to be every turn. Every turn it's going to be minus 20. Can't get rid of it. Can't do anything. Nobody can kill it. Nothing can be done to prevent this from happening unless it could somehow become an empire with no army. The 3 states that were probably failed, Persia, hey, it still sort of exists, only because it's got units it's not paying for. It's bankrupt, has no money. It would be simply its capital subjugated for the rest of the game if it didn't have this. I lied. It was subjugated and loses this. But actually these return automatically. So we have a unit, but we no longer have LMAs either. We're basically down to one thing. But for whatever reason, this state is continuously subjugated, Iberia, to Persia. It continuously becomes a client state to Persia, even though Persia is politically a non-entity. So I don't know when the subjugation happened. I may not have lost it when I lost it, but whatever. We'll just get rid of that and give them back. Honestly, I'm finding this ludicrous, but we'll leave it there, whatever. It's what the rules say, you know. After 3 states have failed, the Alemanni are also, you know, just in this suck where they can't, all they're doing is generating negative victory points. And we're racking up negative victory points everywhere. Even the Franks racked up negative victory points at negative 15 after a bankruptcy. They're at maximum age, maximum decline. But they managed, because they own a province and a few other things, you know, they have some locations, they have some subjugated nations, they managed to come out of it with $16. And I'm not building more units. I mean, that's after paying for my units. I'm not building more units. I can get decent victory points if I can capture Provence, and I can possibly do that. And I just don't see pushing in any other way. I don't think I can get Southern Gaul. It's too much of a mess down there. So I'm just going to go for Provence, try to maximize my victory points, and try to minimize my penalties for the rest of the game by just like keeping enough territory that I don't disappear. And that's the kind of thing that like just is completely unobvious when you start playing. And especially when you're playing these big empires. You look, the Roman Empire and the Persians were able to not just generate, enough money to last and to continue on. They were able to build all their units, keep maximum income. And so basically things like diplomacy cards became worth playing. Now everybody's got diplomacy cards, and it's kind of like, well, that's $1. I don't want to get rid of that. For the Britons, and I almost want to take the loss of units, which is obviously much worse for them, to avoid the catastrophic fire, which means I have to identify all the level 2 and 3 cities on the map, and mark them, and then figure out a die that'll roll them and handle that. Again, a horrible event, one that just, Jesus. There should be a different mechanism, like segment the map into quarters or something like that and trail to 1 or whatever, just so it's not as mechanically painful. This is going to take 10 minutes to figure out, and roll the die and everything. It's just painful having to look everywhere to hunt these things down. Could there be some compendium of this information? There could be. This is the kind of event that works in a computer game. It does not work on a board game of this type. It might work on something much smaller, like a Britannia scale map, but Jesus, it's hard enough to even find the provinces in this game with how cluttered they are. So now I think we're at 23 cities. Mark them. It would be useful to have little number counters, little flags, like for for restaurant tables or something all over the place for this. Again, it's just, this is stupid. Hit the Persian capital, which cannot be reduced. It's a level 3 city, period, the end. And I had the reduction rather than the pillage, so absolutely nothing happened. I had to count all the cities, make a roll on percentile dice essentially to get a 1 to 23 result. I basically broke it into 4 1 to 25s. Anything over 23, I just re-roll. And yeah, that was fun. Absolutely no effect. It could be an impressive effect, but there aren't the counters for it. And likewise, Rome. There's no counter to reduce Rome. Rome seems to be a special city. It's got this special thing on the back that destroys it, which maybe should happen if there's a fire. And it's got... It's a level 3 city, but it's only got level 1 walls. Historically, by this point, Rome was almost depopulated. A little later, it becomes not really a town at all. It becomes almost nothing for a long time, not being represented in this game. Instead, we've got the Rome of that, of whenever this thing started, 350, that's a mighty wealthy Rome still. Okay, granted, like I said, all the cities seem to be declining to some extent. But again, the game just does not handle the events that were happening in anything like a reasonable fashion. And it goes into so much detail trying to fail so badly. Watching everyone decline in this fashion is just too depressing to keep going. I'm going to take another break. The kingdoms are just all falling apart. So far, the Franks are the only one that's showing any sign of life whatsoever. And the Franks looked pretty potent at one point, right? But there's just nothing. There's no possibility. Small kingdoms can't exist because eventually they get to this age. That you would think, 12, that's, it's a 12-turn game. That should happen pretty slowly. It doesn't. It really doesn't. The Franks showed up as a kingdom around here-ish or so. It's taken 3 or 4 turns for them. They showed up as barbarians quite early, but they became a kingdom, I think, around in here, turn 4 or 5, somewhere in there. It's taken them so little time to just become a collapsing problem. What about other people? Well, the Alemanni, same position as the Franks, except they didn't start off with an area, But everybody's generating negative victory points so far. Everybody who's not, turning it. I probably made a mistake with the people I turned into kingdoms, but again, it feels like it's what the game's supposed to be about. This transition, the barbarians moving in, them becoming civilized, them becoming Christian perhaps, and God, I have no idea how to keep track of who's Christian and who's not. Again, the other guy who's doing videos of it did create a play that can keep track of that, but it's like, otherwise, follow the same rule that I followed here, start keeping track of everything on paper. And the game does not support, and it's got a big enough fucking footprint already. I had to push the map a little bit to make space. A Britannia-style game, you shouldn't have 6, 7, 8 countries that you're running at the same time. They should go away. That's part of the conceit of Britannia is, yeah, sure, maybe you want to represent, that city as some ethnic group that's still within the kingdom, but don't. That's stupid. Okay, figured out the point of the game. It's to represent the misery and hopelessness of the Dark Ages, not in a simulation on the board, in terms of the player's own feelings. Worked through a couple more of the kingdoms. The Ostrogoths, they're okay. They ended up with a little extra money and were able to build a couple of units. Kind of like the Franks. It looks like they might survive. The Burgundians, a little bit more problem. They suffered a bankruptcy, which put them further into decline. and they're now at the end of the chart. They're not losing victory points yet, but they will very shortly. The problem for them is, next turn, they got $4. Now, if I pillage, I'm trying to think, do I have anyone that is subjugated to me? I am not subjugated. I gotta check all this shit. I don't think anybody's subjugated to him, which would get me an extra buck. Basically, I'm a buck short of being able to survive next turn. But that means I could either pillage. Well, there's my buck. Okay, so I definitely don't want to build anything. Even though this is a victory point turn and I really want some things, I do not want to build because I got a buck in diplomacy. That gets me to $5. That survives me being able to draw a card if I get lucky next turn without going bankrupt. After pushing our way through some of the younger kingdoms who are still doing a little bit better, including the Suebi, who, are trying to find their way into Hispania, but they're not in decline yet, and their age hasn't reached the ugly place, so they're actually doing okay. The Gepidae, they're not far from empire as it stands. I hope I rolled for them this turn, because I see they have Sarmatia, Danubis. It's what I intended to do for them. Illyria and Moesia, they should have been able to roll. But I don't know. I don't remember that far back. It's not that long ago, but there's just so many little pieces in the game that it's very, it's not very familiar to me. So, things that I'd catch in an EU or certainly in a simple game, I will not catch here. So you kind of have this. Well, the first 4 or 5 times you play it, if you can make it through that many, you're probably going to make lots and lots of mistakes, and then later you're just going to make the amount of mistakes that you bake into your understanding of the rules, whatever they are supposed to mean. But anyway, I got to the Vandals, who are close to Empire as well, but need to expand into another region in order to get there. And I kind of have to take another catastrophic fire because otherwise I age an extra year. The $5 is worth it. I will be making decent money. But man, again, I'm going to have to lay out all those tokens, roll a 20-sider, and figure out probably nothing happens. Nothing of much significance. I mean, unless a city burns, and the chances of hitting a city that actually will burn when most of the level 2 cities are capitals is pretty damn low. This time I found more. I found 27. I must have missed some capitals in there. Not sure. I'll have to try to dig up a 30-sider, I guess, because 27 is not a good number to roll with percentiles. Just from provinces and capital and a couple of caravans, nice positioning that I have 2 of them there and they're wealthy. I'm up to $50 with the Vandals, pretty good. But now comes the problem. Now I have this Penuria that I have to expend. I did not get this. I have to figure out how that works. Now, that's not right on here, and I don't think it's not simply take 25% of what that whole province produces. It's got to do with reducing the amount by grains and all kind of crap like that. So I'm going to have to look up that rule, and that rule is not listed on here in any sense, which means I got to go look in the calamities book until I find it. Part of the problem is it's not called Penuria in the book because the book's in English and that's in I don't know what. But yeah, I mean, it may not take me very long. It's not bad luck. Is it plague? No, it wouldn't be plague. It's not piracy. It's going to be a public. I thought it was on the other side. Scarcity, is that it? Penuria, yes. Okay. So, All provinces and cities are reduced to 3/4. So I'm going to lose 1/4 of that, but every grain I have counters $2 of that change. So what was 1/4 of what I made here is 1.5, 6.5, 7, 8.5, 9.5, 12.5. I didn't get any of that. 13, 13.5, 14.5. Did I round up on there? I don't know. So then 1/4 of 14.5 is probably about 4. I have 2 grain. I'm fine. Does grain from here count? I don't know. Yeah, so I'm fine. And this may have been the case with most of these when they come up, is that they could just be canceled out. And since I usually forget about them, that's probably fair. Now I got to count other sources of income that I haven't accounted for yet. I mean, what, four nations' income? You know, I've used an hour up on that. You know, again, not a 4-hour game or whatever. That first turn, I still don't think that's a 4-hour game either. I think that's shorter. But you know, once you get here, this is looking like a big game. You know, and it doesn't feel like it should be. It just doesn't feel like a Britannia-style game should ever reach that kind of level of pain. I don't know. Yeah, standard levels of depression and this game, adding to them, threw me into a sleep for a couple hours. And it's making it seem like it's a little less likely I'll finish this sucker today. Not the whole game, this turn. So that I get to play something enjoyable in between turns. That's pretty much the way I'm making it through now. Got a couple more to report on here. The Visigoths, fairly stable, to tell you the truth. And the Alani, so young, again, they're not that harmed. I think these guys got their $10 bonus this turn, so I hope. I got no idea. Like, I think I gave it to them long ago when I gave other people their $20 bonus. But if I didn't, these guys are fucked and they're just losing out on it, you know. But the Alani had $10, so that's a fairly likely scenario, is that they had no money and went to 10. The Alani are in trouble. They have to make their way back to Hispania for victory points. They really they're able to break $10, which means they've got a fair chance of not aging too quickly next turn. It's kind of oh hey, do you want your empire to be vibrant and alive, or do you want it to be, you know, economically feasible so that you don't lose lots of victory points off of it? It's just a painful set of choices, and honestly, it might be realistic. Except that, like, some of these did, like, blossom into real empires. We're seeing some of them do. That's sort of a luck of the draw. Did you get there early enough, you know, and make your kingdom, or did you get there early enough as a barbarian tribe that were big enough you could grab an area completely? For some reason, the area boundaries are absolutely vital in terms of economics. An interesting case with a brand new kingdom who doesn't want to be one right now. The Heruli in Italy, hey, they got their victory points or whatever, but they have tons of money. We want to spend some of that, I guess. Unfortunately, we're also subjugated to the Ostrogoths, who own everything around us, with the exception of Cisalpina that the Lombards owned. We're going to have a usurper, but I haven't dealt with that yet. But we have enough cash to build an army, to expand and everything. This is the first case I've seen, although we do have some Vandal ships here, where a kingdom really said, you know what, I need a boat. The Scots actually are going to need one too. Both cases of these, they don't have the ability to build them. Whatever this kingdom is, just won't be smart enough to sail on the waters. It's not, I don't know why, again, what is specific about these barbarians that makes them so scared of water? Where the Visigoths, who obviously are Germanics, not used to dealing in water either, by moving to Hispania, become something different, I don't know. I feel like the barbarians are treated, again, this is the Britannia feeling. Let's make things specific so that they go where they're supposed to go and act like they're supposed to act. And I'm sorry, where you go determines how you act, right? It's not who you were that determines it. It's more what you've done. And the level of this game is such that you're talking about sociological effects more than anything else. That's where this game seems to focus, is more on that than on any other aspect in terms of where its level is set. At 25-year terms, you could say, well, it's sort of political impacts, etc., but not so much when you're talking about things that you're not really looking into their political internals. You're looking at the broad social aspects of these peoples. And when you're talking about that, by limiting the countermixes, by saying people want to go to specific places, you're almost speaking more towards a preordination of goals. You're looking to maybe some ideas of, there are like, I don't know, cultural affinities that are, hidden when they're barbarians, but somehow you're making this statement that the Visigoths are just better and the Vandals are just better at building boats. Because why? I don't know. But you're really kind of, whatever simulation you're creating here is a very, very difficult to defend one. How about something else super cool? So I noticed this said Scotty on it, and I'm like, oh fuck, what the hell? So I removed it. It is actually the jute one. It's just misprinted on the other side, which caused me a little bit of panic because I'm looking and I'm not able to find the Scott income marker. Oh well, the jute income marker. I don't know, the Scott one is hidden under there. I wonder if it says jute on the other side. Yeah, how about that? How fitting. Whatever. And like the scarcity tile, which I forgot to remove, the famine tile basically does nothing. This is an empire big enough to have a granary. I think that brought it down to a 1-point loss. If I could find another granary, I'd be fine, but it's hard to see on this map. There's one over here, but anyway, I have no fucking clue. And these go over here. So far, a fair amount of lookup, the annoyance of an event, etc., almost no impact at all. It would have taken $3 away, which is not much to the big empires, and the real problem is this is the kind of thing that could completely tailspin a little kingdom, right? Which might make sense, but again, oh man, the game's so scaled against you if you can't expand to a big economic base. The idea of small kingdoms, which historically lasted, some argument for why they're still on the board, but they didn't last without any capability to defend themselves in total collapse, just miserable places. They lasted because they had some wealth and could afford to defend themselves, and they weren't worth attacking. They were willing to subjugate or whatever. Byzantines are still rich enough that although they're in double decline And at the end of the chart, and creating some victory point penalties, I have a -5 this turn for them so far, they still have a good economy. They're able to max out at their $40, build all their units, which is essentially nothing. 2 units. Hold on, I fucked up. I'm allowed to build these guys. I had an extra $1, so I'm $3 short. Let me figure out where to put those, because I'm going to want more units, and especially auxiliaries, because auxiliaries are cool because I can use them and leave them to garrison Italy. But yeah, because I was able to build more units, and I was actually able to build 2 fortifications, one over here and one in Greece. And I'm actually getting small enough that I'm running out of areas to fortify. Maybe if I expand, I'll have the desire to do so. But yeah, things are still pretty flush for them. It's not... The problem is that something really terrible could happen once you're at that double decline. And that's kind of what happens to Rome, right? They hit the bankruptcy and they just collapse. But it kind of needed them to start losing territories. The Byzantines are under some threat. The Vandals could do a lot of harm to them. These Epiphtalites could do some damage to them. But for the most part, they're in a more solid position. And this is where it matters that the barbarians do all want to go where they historically went. Because the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, was becoming depopulated. And that's the whole thing. That's not what's represented here as depopulation. The game is representing forces moving due to a desire based on, where do I give victory points? What the fuck? I mean, talk about a blunt hammer, right? And where's the enemy military? Where are their military forces? Neither of those was terribly important. Other than the border, other than stopping the barbarians at the border, the military were not able to do much about those hordes coming over. And the military had actually shrunk. The population had shrunk in the West. This is a game that should be representing the population movements the way the Britannia games do. It shouldn't be trying to do this with a military unit representation. And honestly, that's where you'd see the difference between the East and the West. The West was becoming depopulated. There were diseases. There were other problems. There was a collapse to the economy. There was a lot going on there that was not just the pressure of barbarians. And this feels like it's trying to take, what's his name, Gibbon's The Fall and Decline of the Roman Empire. Because it's clear that when you start looking at how Roman life was proceeding prior to the barbarian invasions, Rome was in decline, and in serious decline, and not some little marker that's like, oh, we're at -10. There's nothing equivalent happening in the Byzantine period in this era, not in the East. Greece is declining eventually. I don't know if it's happening yet, but there's a very, very significant occurrence of just collapse that's almost unexplainable in terms of the types of things this game is exploring. And the representation for that is primarily, where do you want to go? Which is not a completely unreasonable thing as long as it's flexible among the barbarians. But that is what's going to show why the Byzantines are surviving and why the Romans are not. The Byzantines are surviving because nobody wants to be in their territory. Why does no one want to be in their territory? At heart, it's because there's still a vibrant population there for a while. But I presume that's going to start changing. Who do we have left? Because ours are not going to be doing that. I don't know, the Vikings certainly are not. So it may be outside the scope of this game. But yeah, I mean, the collapse of The Byzantine collapse is a weird one too, because they lost a lot of ground to the quick expansion of the Arab invasions, which may or may not have been Muslim. Yeah, I know the Quran is like explicit about this, but there's some serious question about whether or not those invasions were conducted under the Muslim religion, or if the Muslim religion was adopted from somewhere else. Yeah. We can get into that discussion at some other point. And I'm not a scholar to do so. But yeah, I mean, there's the major focus there isn't just this religious puritanism or whatever. It's the fact that, again, the Byzantine Empire in the East was beginning to fall apart, and that opened them up to problems. And I think that's what you're going to see in general, is that empires don't fall because of like the rulers or the military or anything like that. It's broader issues, pandemics, failure of the agriculture due to climatic situations, the kind of shit that we're facing, now, right? Anyway, let me get those last Byzantines on the board, and then. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. And then I think, I got to do a revolt subdual too. But after that, I think we're ready to move to the military side of things. Right? Yeah. Which I'll take a break for. The other thing I wanted to take note on was, one of the things the guy who made the player aid did was he was keeping track of the religions on that. It's pretty fucking vital. I'm marking on the score sheet who has converted, because I can't keep it in my mind. So I think the Ostrogoths converted a while back when they took Italy. I don't know. Again, they got a lot of victory points here, so probably. I don't think I converted the Vandals, and I don't think they want to yet. They still feel like they're expanding and they can become a bigger Christian empire. That's a risky thing. But the Visigoths and the Gepidae both chose. This did not just burn, did it? Yeah, it did. Okay. Both chose to. I hope. I got no idea. Both chose to convert to Christianity. So they got a big victory point boost at this point. And that's kind of the thing. Now, over here in Britain, shit is really crazy, because like both the Saxons and the Jutes are subjugated to the Britons, so they can't attack them. They can't attack each other, I don't think. I think they're mutually, as subject nations, mutually non-hostile, but they can travel through each other, whatever. They're neutral to each other, something like that. But they do have the Scots to deal with, and that's going to be kind of tricky because, well, that's not going to be tricky because the Britons don't own anything in Britain. So they kind of want their subjugated nations to do something for them because they can't do it themselves. This is the model I like. The model I don't like is something like the Suebi, who were trapped in Frank territory and finally made their way out by fighting their way through the Burgundians. Oh, I think the Burgundians went Christian too because they just see no hope. There's other people who see no hope, but it can't get any worse. So things like the Alemanni, it won't get any worse. I'm not going to take the victory points for it. Okay. I'll get those guys down, and then I'll be back later. We begin the actual movement shit, and the Angles shift their way over. The Franks did not try to intercept them. They were a big-ass stack. We're on the Lombards. They have a major invasion, or just an invasion in this game. They launched their first attack against the Ostrogoths, and unfortunately, against the capital, and unfortunately, they got intercepted by most of the Ostrogoth army and pushed back. And that puts me in a kind of a painful position. I wouldn't have been able to submit them, but I would have been able to capture their capital. And I'm interested in all of North Italy. Now my goals are a little different. I think I'm looking more at taking this location. The thing is, I have 2 campaigns afterwards, but I don't think I can break the Ostrogoths very easily. I don't have chits or events to help me particularly. And I just don't see a way to get through them. And the other stuff I pretty much have, once I take this. This might be of some importance. Is Tuscany of importance to me? It should be. Yeah, it's worth 3. Attack the Alans. They intercepted once, and then we beat them off. Killed 1 unit because that's what you can kill in a stack of 3. The others came back. They're actually stronger than before, or about as strong, because now they have an elite at full strength. But then the other 2 interceptions did not work. However, a total of something like 9 dice couldn't roll a 9 on the siege table. So, and all I would have gotten is a subjugation. I wouldn't actually get them. So this is my Lombard kingdom. It's this tiny little thing up here. It looked like, big major invasion. You're gonna get lots. No, not gonna happen. Yeah, there's a lot of luck in these designs, especially the D10 designs. The D6 designs, they tend to be pretty simple. You hit on 6s or you hit on 5s and 6s, and you throw a lot of dice, and shit happens. When you start getting to Hispania, Italia, and especially this, you got these, oh, did I siege this city? Did I take it? Now, I got to tell you, Hispania and Italia work more on normal. Cities are just like fixed locations that you have to beat up. But I think both, I know Hispania has sort of saving throws, where like cities and armored units and stuff are able to avoid getting hurt. So like, the chances of actually killing things starts becoming kind of weird. And this one, with its recuperate your units after each battle, I mean, again, it makes sense with 25-year turns if you're trying to. What doesn't make sense is modeling the military situation in this much detail in 25-year turns. Just ridiculous. I screwed up last time. I thought I didn't have enough pieces to take Caledonia, Hibernia. I forgot. I have a horde. That gives me control of the entire area. So I'm going to still leave peace back here with this horde. But I'm going to push my new unit over here instead. Because there's not much chance I'm going to lose Ireland and Scotland unless somebody else wants it, which will of course be the Vikings, and they'll be the only ones who care. Think of an inherent, so there's this concept in the Britannia games of, every space is kind of valuable, and if you were left alone, you would spread out over as many spaces as you can to get the most production that you can. That doesn't really work here in the same way. And likewise, because, for example, I own all of this without doing shit. And I actually own all of it without having my horde over on Ireland, which is what I was really worried about. And as long as nobody takes Ireland from me, I will be getting it for the rest of the game. But I do have to worry about the Vikings there. But here's the thing. In the other Britannia games, the thing that keeps you, more dense, etc., is that somebody else probably wants to go someplace. And even if they don't get victory points for an area, they might throw 2 pieces into it if you've only got 1 piece in there, because they can almost certainly kill you. And so, you maintain your defensive structure based on that concept of, I don't want to be too spread out because I need to have defensive, positioning within areas. But in this, you don't have either of those. There's no real reason to go take things. What you do take, you can then leave empty, as long as you're civilized. If you're not civilized, you do have to maintain control, which for the Scots is I have to keep my horde there. Anyway, it just it creates this different kind of nature where I've got areas where nobody is at all interested right now in taking anything from the Scots. If yellow were winning, if I felt like that was the case and wanted to knock them down. But these type of games, assuming that they're balanced, take a fair amount of understanding to see, well, where am I at on the victory points right now? Have I accumulated enough? And why do I have... I don't think that can't be a number. That should be on the Hiberni. That's what's wrong. There's actual invulnerabilities in this game, which don't really happen in the Britannia games. You might have pieces that you have that are so far hidden behind that nobody's going to get to them. That's a different factor to like, oh yeah, I'm getting points for this and I don't have to put anything in it and I can just go explore off on the edges and everything. I don't know. In terms of like some of the game decisions, it also falls apart. It not only falls apart as any kind of simulation, which of course, the Britannia series does too. I'm not trying to say, oh, that's so much more historically accurate. What I'm saying is, this spends a lot of effort to be at least as bad in terms of the accuracy. The Barbarian turn was kind of interesting. They wiped out mostly Gepidae that were out here, but note this. They never held enough territories at one time in Sarmatia and couldn't migrate their horde because they weren't an invasion for whatever reason, to be able to get control of Sarmatia or to take control away from the Gepidae. So they still own it, and this city is actually not part of it. So they just still own all of Sarmatia because the Avars have left. The Avars are interested in these locations more than anything else. And that's about as far as I could get. I could have spread out more, but these are worth a lot of points. Their other locations are only worth 1 each. Did I forget things? Hispasis. Tisla, Wallachia. Yeah, the others would be worth 1 each, and I'm not willing to spread out to get victory points of that nature. And another threat to the Gepidae, this time the Bavarians sweep through, capture all the areas they wanted. They also pillaged Pannonia, just for good luck. They probably would have been better off whacking those guys, getting an extra unit or whatever. I tend to make mistakes. Because I could have subjugated them, that would have been cool. Plus, it would give me an extra victory point for stuff in Pannonia, in Danubia. I don't get this, which would be a point for me otherwise, because I just don't have enough units to hold everything. Although, actually, I have all of Germany right now. But there was nothing better I could really do. My horde can only hold one thing. I'm hoping nobody goes and conquers me, but it's possible somebody will. It's a horde, man. It's not really able to defend itself. That's the end of the barbarian tribes. I'm not done with this video by any means. Probably I'll finish up the turn with it, even though it's a victory point turn. All the civilized nations, I don't think I'm going to make them through tonight, but whatever, I need a break right now. And, yeah. But the Gepidae are in trouble. Now this I don't mind, This is what should be happening, right? Kingdoms getting ravaged by barbarians, not kingdoms just slowly degenerating because maybe I fucked up with my coinage or a bad luck event came up or whatever. There's no way this is going to be a competitive game in the way that the best of the Britannia games are. This is way too random, even if you could figure out the rules, And a good thing is, there's a lot of countries out there that can't do shit. Like the Romans, they don't have the Western Gallic, or the Roman Gallics, or whatever they are. They don't have a unit. They don't have anything they can do. Close to that is the Persians, who have a couple of units because they have like this submitter, this client state way out there. That's almost impossible to take from them. I can't think of anything I can do that helps me. I have provinces I can't take off of Rome, off the Byzantines. I have, and I'm not going through the whole list carefully. And then I guess I have, hey, is there any way I can engineer that I'd be destroyed? And there's no way unless I can become an empire. So I just, it's almost not worth the thinking. I mean, yeah, maybe I could attack some of these epithades and try to get a victory point or something, but fuck it, it's just not worth the effort. Okay, for the Franks, things a little bit more complicated. Alemanni, standard, hey, they got nothing, fuck them. Franks have a couple of options right now. One is, my initial plan was to go, the reds are my most valuable, yellows second most valuable, and blues are less valuable locations. My first thought was, well, I was planning on conquering this away from the Visigoths, because it's worth more to me. And I have forces prepared to do that. But here's the issue. If I could get the Burgundians to submit, now that's a much harder project. Something cool could happen where I would potentially get Southern Gaul, I'm not sure. But also, Burgundy itself is important, as are two of their other three locations that they're sitting on. And I mean, I get victory points for any location in there at all. So if there was a way to do that, I would be very much in favor of it. I don't know if I have enough forces. I would have to win a battle, say up here. And, oh, here's one thing. Northern Gaul, I had to check, did I lose it? Because the Angles came in. I'm still in the lead. 1, 2, this doesn't count. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 provinces, barely. Doesn't matter that the Angles walked through Flanders to get to where they went. That reverted to me as soon as they moved in. Same thing as why the Gepidae have Sarmatia with nothing there. But I just don't know if I have enough force to both launch an attack, say here, or maybe here or something, as well as on there. And if I think I do, it might be worth it. But if I don't, well, submitting these, you know, they're already submitted. It's not like I'm doing any harm to my own people. Submitting those might be of some value to me. To try for that higher risk option, I had to cover a couple of their forces and then launch an attack on their capital. Now I've got to pick my battles in the correct order. Actually, right now, because they're in 3 locations only, and I don't believe they own Southern Gaul, I have just put them in a position where all I have to do is attack their capital, and then I can retreat from their other spaces. Retreat from other spaces, that's me making up a rule. That's not explicitly said in the rules, but it doesn't make a lot of sense if it were handled any other way. And you can see I've left a lot of spaces, well, not this one, but a lot of spaces empty that, you know, you'd think I should be covering. But no, it doesn't matter. I own those. Unless somebody else comes in and takes Northern Gaul from me, which I don't think can happen. Why that doesn't make sense. I gotta fight the battles before I fight the siege. I can't do the siege. It's not like the Barbarians walking through something. So yeah, I have to actually fight the battles. And the siege isn't going to work. I already checked it. That was actually a fairly complicated little operation, to tell you the truth. And it ended up with the Burgundians losing territories because the Franks won here but failed in taking the city in a siege. They were defeated here, no assassination. And since I didn't get my leader, I can't do much follow through. I still have Northern Gaul, I still have most of the points I had. I did end up missing out on this that I would have liked to have gotten. But that's the end for the Franks. Now it's the Burgundy. Submitting them would have been a big deal too, because then they want to expand to the areas that they can take that were valuable. But now they're free to attack Franks and to try to get control of southern Gaul, which might be an interesting option for them. We'll see what their values are. This system does a good job of is in keeping kingdoms from blooming up to something much larger. I kind of like that aspect. Well, I really like that aspect. Some of it is just countermix, though. That I'm not as impressed with. But what I am impressed with is the fact that, look, there are plenty of Franks available still, but they're having a hard time moving upward. So the harshness of this system, the economic pick, the draws, the possibility of problems, all that constrains your kingdoms for, that's very pleasant. It makes that leap up to empires, which I don't even know if it ever happened, in terms of, I'm trying to think if there's anyone I would say made it. The Franks came close with all of Gaul and then expanding into Hispania and eventually Italy, but not in the time period of this game. The Vandals, I don't think so. I think, what I've got is actually further than they historically reached. They're doing quite well. The Gepidae, they were the only ones who had a role for empire. They didn't make it, and now they're probably never going to get another chance. I thought they would keep getting chances. No, it's not going to happen. So I like the fact that the game kind of takes these kingdoms, lets them blossom. And, some of them might be able to survive for a long time, like the Franks did historically, like maybe you could say the Lombards did, although outside of this period they really kept going. But it's not a likely outcome. It's an unlikely outcome. The most likely thing is you will fall apart and collapse. The problem I have is with the nature of what that collapse is represented by. One little city on the map that prevents anyone else from ever owning that territory, that region, for economic reasons or whatever. That I find less believable and less acceptable. And that's one of the things I'd really want to tweak about this if I play it again. With almost as painful a campaign, they've given up Liger. They were going for the Alemanni. They failed on a couple of attempts. I had to maintain a unit here at Rhodus. The problem being, I can't get control of southern Gaul. It's too much of a mess. So unlike the Franks, I don't have sort of this free area that I can pull my troops out of and expand from. So that's the Burgundians. I was thinking more about, I need to keep this card, because if somebody sieges them, they're going to want to spend it. If I did want to fiddle with the game, the things that I most want to fiddle with are the things where it's most like Britannia. And I think, honestly, it's the whole victory point system. The whole victory point system is bothersome to me. I just don't accept it. The barbarian Gauls don't make sense because they're related to where they historically ended up rather than any kind of driving reason to be in those places. They have no reason to be in those places. Given that, they should be able to make some sort of value or decision making, based on the actual facts on the ground. And here's the problem with the game. It doesn't represent what the hell is going on here. And in a sense, you're getting some of that with these barbarians sprouting up out of nowhere. But the German tribes are leaving because there's population pressure here and a vacuum over here. And that's what really needs to be represented, is the population vacuum. Now that's what Britannia does a good job of. But this game doesn't show that. This game shows where the military units are. So there's this whole void area that's trivial to take, but absolutely worthless to everyone. So nobody wants to be there. And people are just pushing through to other places. And the fact that the representation is the wrong way to show where the populations are. You know, this should be off-map shit, and they should just be drifting in or something if it doesn't matter. And honestly, it doesn't matter. Europe doesn't make a damn bit of difference in this game, like Central Europe and especially the German areas. Because the tribes that it wants to highlight are the ones that are getting sucked into where there's less population. So, you know, what can you do with that sort of design decision? Well, you can kind of make German areas just not worthwhile and you know, allow these migrations in. But how do you want to represent that with the military, and what is the victory point, you know? I don't know. I am just having a really hard time getting a picture on it. I feel like the provincial side of things is or the area side of things is also problematic, because why is it that you have to pretty much dominate all of Hispania, which is not easy to do, to get its low value, whereas in other places that are much richer, you need a lot less military to take them over. Well, by any, you know, if you got rid of victory points, if you got rid of location-based victory points, what would happen is the exact opposite, right? The Byzantines, with their more valuable areas, would become the targets, not the Western Romans. There's an association between why something is unvaluable economically and why the barbarians want to be there, you know? And it's just, the game's just not modeling the right thing to show what's going on. And I'm having a real problem trying to grasp this. So like, when I said, well, I would tinker with the victory conditions, what was I talking about? Well, the other thing I was talking about was largely the let's prevent people from going to hell, in terms of just this negative victory point thing. At some point or another, you should just be able to abandon a kingdom, get rid of it. It's not going to be worth it anymore. Stop. You know, that might be the best answer for that. And once you make that decision, well, then what? How do you represent it on the map? I'm also iffy about a number of other things, like why a fire can't affect, you know, a level 2 capital. Why it'll automatically like be fine. It won't be reduced in size, whatever. Yet capturing it can reduce it. Well, not reduce it in size, but can take it away from you in a way that it can't be taken away if it's your last holdout. And just all kinds of stuff that I feel like I'd have to have a different image in mind. It's like, I want to use this. I want this to have a good game behind it because it's got neat pieces and everything. But I feel like the design decisions are so embedded in what was designed that no, it's just not possible. You know, the concept is so flawed. The Ostrogoths not able to improve their position in either case. The Britons with just one piece. The Ostrogoths, you know, I'm like, well, screw it, man. Actually, kind of want this. 1, 2, 3. I want to garrison that. And let's put these up in Benevento. Yes, I could launch an attack against the Lombards in Venice. Maybe I want to do that, because that won't hurt me and that's worth points. I don't think I can subjugate these guys. There's too many of them. Are they overstacked? 2, 3. Nope. The question, though, is, do I want to, you know, get rid of my sort of defensive advantage? Well, I'm paying for my troops. So if he can't make it into here with many units, I get a lucky shot at him. So that may be my best move. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get many. I could actually get a couple of those heavy cav up there. Let's do kind of a clever move, to tell you the truth. The attack here pulled them off there. Okay, great. I had a chit that allowed me to get an extra black die, so I was playing with a couple black dice, which is pretty cool. But I wasn't successful. In fact, it went poorly. I ended up losing a unit. But then I pulled more units up and launched another attack on here. Now, if he had failed to reinforce there, there's a good chance that, that's unlikely, but there's a good chance I would have submitted the Lombards, and that gives me 3 areas that I want. The net effect was I lost a unit. I created a bunch of victory points for both of us, and I'm okay overall, I guess. Now I gotta find my Burgundians. I must have tucked them in already. Yeah, it was bedtime for them. Now it's on the Swebby to see if they can make their way into Hispania and get any victory points there. They took things kind of carefully. They could have done some exciting stuff and opened themselves up to interceptions by the Visigoths, but instead I hit those, I don't know what the hell they are, basically the Basques. And they could retreat into here. It's non-urban, it's not friendly, and there's no chance for the Visigoths to intervene. So then I moved in and attacked them again and finished off their last unit. Now, here's where things get interesting. The rules for subjugation don't cover this. There are rules for something being eliminated off the map. The closest is, and this is where the game just like starts falling apart in terms of the rules completely. If a kingdom has no capital, a kingdom leader, if any, and its stack must be entirely eliminated again. That's what just happened. In that case, a pillage marker can be drawn, representing the kinglet's treasure. When a kingdom submits, it still has to evacuate. So I think it would recover, well, it had no way to recover its units. That's the real problem here. There also was no king, so I'm not drawing a pillage marker. But the if any is kind of weird. I think as long as a minor kingdom has no capital available and no king available and nothing, it can disappear. So, one of the longest living groups that's been living in its same area and has some sort of national identity, even to today, is actually completely eliminated from the game. Where like Gallic Roman cities maintain their existence, apparently through the all of time. No idea whatsoever. And we're going to see the Romano-British tradition in London for the rest of this game. And presumably, if the game continued with the same rules, and I don't know if it does, it would last until the modern day. Nice, huh? I hope I'm not moving people forward. I don't know if I moved the Ostrogoths forward. That would be a little cheap, but this would be a cheap too. Shit. I got no fucking clue. I'm going to move them back because I'm afraid I pushed them forward, and they should not. We want them to survive. Alright. Puts us on the Gepidae. I think I'm done for tonight. I am fatigued. And I know the Gepidae are going to have a little bit of complexity because they have to deal with this incursion that happened on them and try to score it out. I don't think they've actually lost the Danube yet. I would have scored it if I did, or written it down if I thought they did, but of course I probably wasn't thinking about it. So there were 8 provinces in the Danube. 3 of them have fallen. Has another? I don't know. I think this is the border. I don't know. Who the hell can tell? Anyway, I think they still have a hold on all their territory, but it's becoming more tenuous, and it's really hard to tell, you know? I mean, this is the thing. I look at that and I'm like, I own Sarmatia, yeah, okay. But even with the Anubis, where I'm looking at it, I've got to be able to understand, is this part of that? Is what is going on? And it's not trivial to see by looking at the board, and that's why it's bedtime. So the Gepidae resurge and take back most of the territory the Afri had grabbed. Now, in order to do this, though, they had to pin the main stack and launch an attack against it, and they've basically denuded their army heavily. Now, you'll see they have basically nothing in Illyricum and very little in Moesia, and actually nothing up here in Danubia. But that doesn't matter. They own these things. They don't need an army to keep control over them. And I do agree and understand that. I have issues. That's all. Let's just leave it at that. That's going to put us to the Vandals, who look in a lot better health, not being pressed by multiple barbarian tribes. The Vandals, I have a series of attacks sweeping up into the Near East, taking care of this revolt, but from here over I haven't moved yet. I don't see something I want to do here. What I really need to do is get a navy, I guess in this sea zone, but that's not possible until I build a city, which isn't something I have control over. This is not a game where you have that level of control. Cities, you get the option for a city to spring up. I could put one in here. Because what I'd like to do is launch an attack on Sicily, which is actually worth something to me. I own everything else that's worth something to me. I'm hoping to gain the capability to move to empire as I begin aging, but I think I'm going to take a chance at making an invasion. Yeah, the chance of me being intercepted is so high. The question is whether I want to bring him down and do an invasion with him on his one campaign to take Sicily. It's unlikely the Ostrogoths will intercept. The Byzantines, I don't know how they feel. They might try to stop me or not, but chance may just stop me. And the Vandals were partially successful. I chose not to make an attack with these. I attempted to cross, was foiled by the weather, because I figured if I made it across and got it to Apulia safely, then I could bring him in, take Sicily without much harm, and get those extra points. The danger, of course, mainly being the Byzantine fleet could attack me, but they couldn't because the weather was too bad for me to cross. So, but the attacks that I launched here, a pinning attack and well, actually all of them were intended to succeed. None of them did. We got flung back in every direction. So I brought my leader in and took Palestinia, which doesn't steal Orions from the Byzantines. There was somewhere where I'm worried that somebody's going to lose a province. I don't remember what. You know, the Franks are close to the line there. I'm sure the Visigoths are, and in fact, had my Vandals attacked the Visigoths, they probably could have taken control away, but the Visigoths go after them, so they could rearrange it. But yeah, trying to assess the control of areas is actually becoming the hardest single mental aspect of the game. And I'm not sure that's going to clean up easily. That's the part that makes the economic phase difficult. And yes, I'm writing them down, and that helps. I don't have to remember anymore. But man, everything else is still painful. It's not like the introduction of a more military element is just altogether a negative. I wanna emphasize that it adds some interesting decision making to the game. So, for example, along with all the flexibility and movement and everything, I do want to highlight some of where it shines. So we've got. I had a choice of how to deal with the Visigoths in Hispania, and so I shoved some into here with the Suebi. If the Suebi reacted into that space, okay, then I could take the more valuable space from them. Now, I may still go for it with a campaign, but this is even more valuable, and it's not defended by a leader. Of course, I am crossing a strait into a mountain, and that's terrible, but I can bring a fair amount of units, and he actually has too many, so I'm not going to allow him to defend with all of them, that being because he had a leader there at one point, and he probably has to get some units out of there. I don't know how to resolve that, actually. What happens when you attack something that's overstacked? I think he probably had to clear his overstacking up during his movement, so I'll get a couple guys out of there. The Visigoth campaign clears the Vandals out of there. Their first attack did not succeed in doing anything. Keeps moving us through these younger kingdoms. There's another notation that I want to make that I haven't been making, and you know, it's not going to work for this game, but if I play again, whenever a country becomes a kingdom, or an empire for that matter, but kingdom's the important one, I want to mark that transition over here on the score sheet in some means, you know, for that turn, just like square their box or something like that. Just to keep a reminder, because I'm not sure who's going to get their $10 out of these guys. You know, who deserves it, who doesn't. I am pretty certain these three certainly are at $10 each. And if the Jutes are, the Saxons are, the question is the Alani, did they move that far up? And I don't think so. I think, yeah, they've already gotten their $10. So these guys are due to get $10 on the next turn. Any crap out in both their attacks. They tried to move into Hispania and got stopped there by an interception coming from Cantabria. Visigoths don't need to actually hold that. They control the province, or the area as a whole. And they launched a siege here, which again failed. And that puts us to the Saxons. These Epithecalitae, whatever the hell they are, they succeeded in taking all of Persia. They went to try to take Artemita. They made 2 cracks at it. The Byzantines did not intercept or anything because they want to keep their force together. They're more interested in getting Orions back from the Vandals. And this is really not worth a hell of a lot to them. They'd still own Mesopotamia as much as they own it. They wouldn't own all of it, so they don't get their victory points. So it's basically, you know, probably worth a victory point or something, but the hell with that. The Palestinian area is worth a lot more, as is moving west. And these guys also threw the 3 units away to get 10 extra victory points on that. So they are done. And what do we got left? We got the Jutes and the Byzantines, and that's it. The Jutes really could do was move their boat to where it's legal to be. I don't know why they're allowed to have a boat when they're barbarians. There's a special rule arranged for that. But whatever, now that they're civilized, it really should be linked to their city. They grabbed Cornwall, which just helps the Britons, but it does give them a little bit extra income next turn, and they may need it. Is the Byzantine desires, their wish list. Most of the points are in Italy, and this will go for the end of game as well. This hope to get to Spain, whatever. There's an alternative route, which is a little easier because the Vandals open things up, which is into Africa. my navy being better, I can probably make it there, assuming I can get the invasion off. That's the big if, right? That's what failed last time, was just the die rolls for the invasion. There's nothing in the east, except I really want Palestine. So I'm going to have to make a shot to take that back. Well, I don't really want Palestine. I really want all of Orient. Or I want all of Mesopotamia. Either one is possible. I actually already have all of Mesopotamia because I have the province. There's no one else in it except for the Persians, and they're submitted. So I get that. The Vandals are the hard part. I'm not going to be able to submit the Vandals, by cheaply grabbing Africa, or even their capital at Utica, which is also important to me. But here I have to make a decision of which invasion I want to make. The Italian, where there's really three, the Reds are a little bit more valuable, three of them, and maybe Sicily that I could reasonably get. But those will be opposed. The Ostrogoths are fairly powerful. Or over here in Africa, where, I can't get very much, maybe to here, although that could be intercepted. But this is a surer thing than this, because that'll be opposed. There is a possibility that there'll be opposition even in a landing on Africa. No chance at Utica, I think, unless there's Cav here. Yeah, so. But I can't reach Utica. My boats don't go that far. Could they go that far? Yeah, I could actually shift a navy over to here and be able to ship things there. Leaning towards the Italian expedition, though, because that's where all the points are for a long time, and that's where they actually did hold out the longest. And one of the nicer things is maybe if I do get kind of established, I can take some of the islands, which are going to be a lot harder to take away from me. And again, that's where some of the holdout positions for the Byzantines were. You'll see that in Hispania, where they hold the Baleares, for the whole game, basically. The Byzantines succeeded in the sea crossing. Justinian landing here, but the Ostrogoths intervened, and that could be the end of Justinian, to tell you the truth. Of his force, because they got kind of nowhere they can retreat to. But it's probably just my wife. Elsewhere, we're making a move on all of Moesia. That won't get us this. There were interception attempts. They failed. So the Gepidae really lost their chance, as far as I can tell. They're in serious trouble now as things start getting stripped away. And then our shot down here. I will not be able to get the points for Tyrrhus, even if I succeed in taking Moesia, because it's under revolt, but, that's okay. At least that's my judgment of it. But I will get the points for this. I may be wrong on that, as everything. All right, let's do the battles. And at the end of all that, the cream of the Byzantine army has been destroyed in Apulia. In addition, we failed here. We really pretty much failed everywhere, to tell you the truth. We failed down here. We had a successful battle here. We did take Epirus, but that isn't enough to give us Moesia. The Gepidae still control the majority of the provinces there, so they have a victory there, or they have not fallen and lost that yet. Sarmatia is even still Gepidae, even though I was able to slip into it with a unit. This is after repositioning of units, I hope. And yeah, the Byzantines look a whole lot weaker after that expedition. Their last expedition, they didn't make it. And this time they did, and that's what hurt them. I thought they made it once and got repelled before. I don't know, but they're really running low on troops. And remember, they can't recover these things very easily. So they're super elite units, they lost both of them going into here. It looked like they had better dice than the Ostrogoths did, but the Ostrogoths had a slightly better leader, and it was close enough that, it really came down to a tie, and the leadership value was the thing that determined who had to retreat, and the Byzantines were not allowed to retreat. So that's cool. That puts us, because they're not allowed to end their retreat here. Here and here are occupied. This has a fortified city, so they can't even go through it, or these. So this becomes a dead end, and yeah, they were blocked off. And that's the danger in a naval invasion. Okay, now I think we just count the points. The Byzantines get their diplomacy cards that I don't really care about scored, which is one reason they didn't loot, is they had a lot of points, and I think that's gotten everyone. So yeah, we're at that point. Calculating out the red points, a lot of people overcame their negatives here. Notably, obviously the Eastern Empire is still pretty solid. The Western remnant is not. That's at -20. You can't do anything. But the Franks were at like -14. They're up to 22 points with all the possessions they still have. Yes, there's some angles on the English Channel coast that I do not like, and they don't want to be there. The Britons also made up a lot of room. They got 30-something points, making up from their negative by all the stuff that the Jutes and the Saxons have conquered for them. However, they didn't get Bernicia, and that prevents them from getting the All Britannia bonus. And of course, they couldn't make it over to Morecambe. Now, if they had some way of like giving the Jutes a bonus, the Jutes might have sailed over there for them. But there was really nothing they could offer the Jutes except, and there's nothing at all they could offer. They could, like, if they had more territory, they could offer a feudum, which the Jutes would love. And I think they can be subjected and feudum at the same time, I hope. If not, then it wouldn't be worth it because they need the spaces that the Jutes have. So they netted for red 36 points overall, which isn't too bad. We'll keep going. Although they have a lot of submitted things, the Alemanni, not really able to make up their negatives, but others able to make some ground. The Suebe finally getting some points. The Epithalite up to 61. 10-point bonus for Persia, 10-point bonus for that. Nice. A lot of territory that they are interested in. The Saxons have a total of 18. They didn't get all of that off of, they were halved, but they got a fair amount. And the Lombards ended up with 28 for their 3 little areas. Now that includes what they've gotten for the turn, but their total for the turn for green is 96. Very healthy. They haven't really been doing a lot of points. As long as the red start getting some negative points, this might actually end up more balanced than it seemed at first. Like, my feeling was, oh my God, it's just crazy. But baking, and this is why I'm afraid to tinker with the victory points, although I feel like I have to, is that, there might have been a fair amount of play balance attempting here. It's not looking as ridiculous as Hispania in terms of, like, I don't feel like there's anybody who's just screwed, right? The Huns. But it's highly, and I don't think the Huns are just screwed. It's just that, like, there's such a variability, The Visigoths made it to Spain. Other people didn't. So the Visigoths are going to score a lot of points. If you're able to establish your territory correctly, you can get a lot of points, but it's a lot more random whether or not you can get your territory. There is one thing in Britannia that's similar to that, at least in the edition I have, which is the Danes. That's more dependent on player experience. Really inexperienced players will not prevent the Danes from getting buttloads of points. The Romans get buttloads of points too, and there's not much you can do to prevent that. But yeah, the Danish invasion can be really, really devastating. Okay, on to the next. Hello, Brown with a number of healthy countries really kicks ass here. Yes, they have the penalty for Persia, which is just a point sink at this point in the game for the rest of the game. And again, it's important that it be such, because the Vandals got 75 points. They've gone beyond what they're expected to get in North Africa, pushing their way up, into the Near East, and with not much threat, really. There was a possibility the Byzantines could fuck with them heavily, which maybe they should have. The Heruli, and so some of them, the Alani, the Heruli, basically generated no points from territory at all. But the Gepidae still managed to pull out a total of 50 points for the turn. They don't actually care about Moesia. They care pretty much about Danubia, and they've been able to hold that for points. However, they are not in the position they once were. Like last turn, they were about to become an empire. Now they're holding 2 provinces, and they haven't lost Moesia yet, have they? Yeah, they're still holding 4 provinces, actually. They could become an empire next turn, which might change things significantly for them, because remember, empires don't have to pay maintenance on units. They don't get as much cash, and they pay more for those cards. So it all ends up this weird imbalance. It's really hard to tell which things should go where. After them, the Jutes still managed to pull a total of 19 points for the turn. And that's subjugated. And then the Scots pulled 31 points for basically doing nothing that no one can oppose, which is, this is the kind of stuff that I find kind of crazy. And this is what you have to learn about these Britannia-style games is, what is the victory point chart going to do to you? There's pretty much no way, no reason that the Scots are going to get stopped here. But the Vandals, that could have gone any way. They could have been one of these stub barbarians that just doesn't score anything. And the fact that Yellow managed to get to get some of its barbarians into pretty good position in terms of the Gepidae and the Vandals, yeah, they're racking up points. That came to a total of 169 for the turn. One more to go. Also able to rack up some serious number. The Ostrogoths, by still holding Italy. It doesn't look like it, but they have it. 38 points total for the turn. The Visigoths, Hispania, that brought them a total of 79 for the turn. Again, not just population, but in both cases, we're looking at kingdoms that were not submitted yet. And the Ostrogoths are a little less than healthy, but, the Burgundy, able to squeeze out 14 points there, not being submitted. If they could have gotten Southern Gaul or something, they'd be racking in the points, but that's just too much of a mess for them right now. The Angles, 0 for the turn. And next turn, they merge with the Saxons, which is something I'm not looking forward to dealing with, because both countries' pieces are on the board. They're just sort of one country then, and they share the points or something. I don't know. The Bavarians, they pretty much maximize their points, 24. They can't do any better than that unless they get some kind of event that gives them extra units. And the Avari managed a total of 13 for the turn. This was really important to them, and I kind of guess I didn't think the Gepidae would make it there or whatever, so I didn't defend that as much. But that netted them 168, essentially in the same realm, and they're not doing as well as Yellow is, though, by any means. Green is still kind of putzing along. They haven't been able to get anything that's really kicking ass. This is probably their best play right now. I don't think Vikings. Yeah, the next two are yellow. The next two countries. So the question is, can green do anything valuable? You know, we're establishing our Suebi. They might be able to start scoring some points up there. The Lombardi might be able to score some points. I'm not expecting anything much from any of their others. We don't know. The Saxon-Angle combination might work out well. The fact that the Britons still exist as a viable thing and that everybody submitted to them is a problem. I don't know what's going to happen when the Angles and Saxons combine. Do they stay submitted? Do they stay submitted because the Saxons were submitted? I would say probably not, but who knows? Yeah. And so that is the end of turn 9. That puts us, we're going to get the Khazars in. And, but first, I am going to do something because I have to have a treat in between each turn of this. It's gotten too painful, you know. And I don't know, you know, I do remember EU at least being this painful the first time through, with me throwing my hands up in the air about some of the events, and then just eventually figuring out how to deal with them, which is one of the reasons I do want to come back and try playing this some more, not on video, because doing it on video does reduce my ability to, like, to be free, you know, to make as many errors. I make a ton of errors in video. I probably make more if I'm not, and maybe discover ways of playing that work better, even if they introduce more error. But then the question there is, hey, there are other games I want to play again. Things like Axis Empires, which I'm so pissed that, like, they're re-releasing it instead of... I hope they're releasing a patch for it, but if it's just a re-release, I am not at all thrilled. The idea was, hey, this was going to be the big final, and then, yeah, we didn't quite get something in, and now I feel like, yeah, we didn't quite get something in because we didn't have it figured out in a way that would work with it, and probably it's a whole new game, and kind of discourages me. I went through that shit with Starfleet Battles so many times, you know, and if I was playing Axis Empires like I used to play Starfleet Battles, yeah, I could excuse the fact that I need to buy a new set every now and then. But it's really hard, especially since I went out and bought Totaler Krieg and needed that to understand how Axis Empires worked, because the rules, although Totaler Krieg's rules were not great, they were written, again, in a style I don't really like. Axis Empires were just far sparser and did not give any flavor. And that's actually one of the things with this game. When I played La Grande Guerre, Europa Universalis, especially Europa Universalis, yes, there were things that I scratched my head about and said, this is just wrong, whatever, but it was intuitive and understandable from a reading of the rules, just what the game was really about. I'm not sure this is. I feel like I'm just beginning to grasp I feel like playing it was required to kind of get a grasp on what the fuck the designer's trying to do here. And I don't think he's done it right. You know, I really don't think so. But I'm still not sure. There are certain things that are mechanical burdens in the game that I don't think work right. And I don't know how to fix that without completely, you know, trying to revamp the victory point system so that I can get rid of these countries that are doing nothing. Things like this. They're doing nothing. They're actually causing problems in terms of the income, etc. They don't, and They make it a little harder on the newer kingdoms to form, and they don't really add much to the game, but it is absolutely clear that the big negatives that these old kingdoms you haven't been able to keep alive is an important part to balancing out, the big bonuses that we got early on, at least for red, Of course, the Franks should be kicking ass better than they are. They shouldn't have a bunch of angles in the middle of their territory. Blame the Jutes for that. If it was pink, if it was the Britons who did it, I'd be like, you fucking cut their own throat. But the Jutes somehow did it by sinking that boat. I don't think, barbarians in barbarian areas are supposed to be kind of friendly to each other. Maybe they should be at sea too, and that would solve this. But obviously it was in the Jutes' best interest to sink that boat. They were already there. They could lose their boat. They could afford the loss. The Angles could not. Okay, this has gone longer than it should have. Should have been broken into two probably, but screw that. Up it goes.